Hello and welcome, I'm Oles Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations Kurt Volker has resigned. The move comes after it emerged that Volker helped connect Trump's personal lawyer and Ukrainian officials to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his son. Volker is due to appear before Congress this week and was mentioned in the whistleblower complaint as helping Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, quote, to navigate Trump's demands. Meanwhile, Democrats in the House of Representatives have launched a probe into an impeachment inquiry against U.S. President Donald Trump. To discuss this and more, we welcome to our studio today Dr. Maksym Yakovlyev, Director of the School for Policy Analysis at the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy National University. Hello and thank you for joining us today.
Hello and thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you in this studio, as always. So the whole story looks like a fiction movie, and it would be probably harder to imagine maybe a script or invent a script like the reality like it happened in reality. So what is your stance about Kurt Volker's resignation?
Well, for the first, I would like to come down, and I would like all of us to come down, because for a viable democracy and for viable bilateral relations between any nations, it is important not to have them tied and located or vested within only one person. It is not good. So within all this case, with investigation and the procedure of impeachment of the President Trump, it is important to understand that people play different roles, and it is very wrong to tie everything or to put everything into one hands or to vest everything into one particular person. Regarding Kurt Volker, there are many discussions on his role in different aspects, the most radical being that he could not fully play his role in negotiating with the Russian side, I mean with Surkov. So the only things he could do basically is negotiate directly with Ukraine or do something that Trump would tell him to do. So it is a complicated story. We have to wait and see what he's going to tell to the American Parliament, to this Congress hearings and things like that. But I would like us all, as said, to come down. There are many good American politicians, and United States are a very important partner for Ukraine. And I hope that the next representative for Ukraine, the person responsible for having connections and ties with Ukraine and to Ukraine, is also going to be a very active and interesting person.
Yeah, the deposition for this position of envoy for Ukraine negotiations is scheduled for October 3rd, approximately, and let's see whom they're going to pick. But it's curious. Kurt Volker's story is very curious because he had an impeccable reputation, and also there are two visions of this case. The first one is that Volker, some people are convinced that Volker tried to minimize the negative impact of President Trump's attempts on relations between Washington and Kyiv. In particular, Volker helped to figure out in the text, it's used, the word navigate is used in the text, the disturbing messages from the Washington. And the second vision is that Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's personal lawyer, actually claims himself that Volker helped Giuliani to get contact of Ukrainian officials. What is your stance on this, and do you believe that Kurt Volker could be directly involved in this case?
Should I say yes to your final question? I would be actually blaming a particular person for a very strange affair that actually is now, like, resonates worldwide. I do agree with you that Kurt Volker is, of course, much more politically experienced than the current American president, Mr. Trump, but well, I think it's not for us to judge in terms of, we're not the court, we're not the judges to decide if the person is guilty of any involvements. Of course, this story is rather interesting from political networking perspective, who responds to whom, who does what for whose political gains, and that is very important in the context of the United States upcoming presidential elections. So, but I would have to say that my position is, let's see. how far the investigation goes, what will be discovered based on evidence and facts, not only on rumors, if we have enough proofs to certain claims, and then let's either the Commission of the Congress decide, or maybe there would be some court rulings with certain decisions, because I think that discussing rumors in that context would not play good, not only for me and you now discussing this in the studio, but also for the reputation of Ukraine as a country.
That's true. And my next question is, how can this impact Ukraine? And since Kurt Volker has already proved that he was very motivated and dedicated for Ukraine, for the support of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and he has delivered numerous times the true evidence of this strong stance, and now it is very important who is going to be his successor. And for Ukraine, the story has just begun. It looks like it's going to evolve into something, and now it is unpredictable what results, what outcomes from the deposition or from the future evolvement of the story we can expect. But how would you comment the possible impact that all these scandals can have on Ukraine, taking into account the Trump and Zelensky situation, and also Kurt Volker resignation?
For the first, the most dangerous thing Ukraine might be facing is becoming a toxic country. We're famous in the whole world for different corruption cases. We're also famous for our revolution, so I'm glad that a part of the Ukrainian political community and also social community, both of us share this understanding that if we are oppressed by a government, if our presidents go too far in actually harming the people and things like that, we can protest and we can organize effective Maidans to overturn any types of tyrants. So for that we also have respect. But by becoming toxic, I mean that foreign leaders might be very, very cautious in contacting Ukrainian leaders and have this attitude to Ukraine. On the other hand, on a more positive note, not a single leader in the world could now say that Ukraine is not significant. We are not insignificant. When Russian propaganda constantly tells us and the whole world that Ukraine is a nonsense, is a non-existent country, is a fake state, a failed state, and things like that, now we're becoming more and more important, also significant. You see, I would like to stress this point that even bad PR or black PR is also good in terms that it tells the whole world that Ukraine and things related to Ukraine are becoming more and more important and they resonate. Yes. So this is on a more positive side. So.
Yes, now Ukraine will be enshrined in history books
which you see
of the United States. That's true. And this possible attempt to impeach President Trump, this is also a historic move. Trump is becoming the 4th president of the United States that might go through this procedure. By the way, what are your thoughts on the possibility of the impeachment actually to be implemented, to be voted for?
I really doubt that it is going to be a successful one as a procedure, not only from the history of the United States, because all previous attempts actually failed, basically, but also not only because the Senate is basically Republican. There's another idea because the Democratic camp, I would like to stress this now, that this polarization of two political camps in the States, it is really a danger to democracy, and it is not only me who is making this claim. There's a wonderful book, How Democracies Died, by Levitsky and Ziblatt, who actually say that this polarization between Republicans and Democrats now is also a bad thing because it threatens American democracy, and everything that threatens American democracy is a threat to the whole world order, because the United States is a huge superpower, and it is very important that they preserve and they continue to be a democracy and not a populist-run state or something. I doubt the successfulness of this impeachment procedure. On the other hand, on a more positive note, I would like to think of the United States that people change their minds regarding support of Trump as being the only Republican candidate who can really be a successful president. I'm also sure there are other worthy people who could run for presidency from the camp of the Republicans, and definitely Biden is not the only leader of the Democrats who might run for the office. So I do hope that this whole story will have a positive impact on the rotation of elites. That as we use the Ukrainian expression, that potentially we might see some new American faces running for a presidency from both the Republican and the Democratic camp.
Yeah, but now Joe Biden probably can use can take advantage of this scandal.
And he will. He definitely will, yes.
In his political campaign. But in your opinion, what are the conditions that under which Republicans can vote against Trump?
As said, this polarization that we support Trump not because we like him or dislike him, just because he is a representative of us, that othering, that there are bad Democrats and we are the good Republicans, it is a bad idea. We'll see. I think if there is a very strong candidate from the Republican camp, and if there are definite doubts whether Trump's presidency is a good thing for the United States, but I don't have a simple solution. Something must change in the attitudes and perception of the people. So, as Ziblatt and Levitsky mentioned this book, they say the problem is that within the Democrats there have always been conservatives, which now are extinct basically, and the same with the Republican camp, more liberals within the Republicans, if I may put it so. So, if they come back and if there becomes an intersection of ideas and perceptions, and one thing that can always unite them is the idea that the United States need to continue to be a viable democracy as an example for the rest of the world.
For the rest of the world, that is true. And let's discuss the idea of declassifying the telephone conversations of Donald Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Russian leader Vladimir Putin. What is your take on this? This is the idea how to continue the investigation and maybe some possible links between Mr. Trump, personal links between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin.
And the reaction by Russia, the great tweet or information from one of the Russian politicians who said that if the Ukrainian president would also make open the calls or publicly accessible the calls or conversations with Putin, he would fall prey to nationalists and all the other scoundrels in Ukraine. It is just marvelous. I think for the public it is really interesting to read and to see what the top leaders talk to each other. I think that would be, on the one hand, it is not probably a good idea because there's always this, some things need to be classified and need to be kept more or less secret. On the other hand, one of the claims of the populism as the worldwide successful ideology today is that there are corrupt elites who are doing something behind our backs, and they're discussing something with each other. By opening this discourse, by making this discourse open to the public, that might be a thing to counteract populism in a more positive way.
That's
saying,
true.
you see, the top leaders are discussing things, they make it open to the public, it is not a secret, people are trying to, they're at least striving for a better future, better bilateral or multilateral relations between the countries. So there is something positive to it as well.
There should be some probably huge blow to diplomacy if these telephone conversations will be declassified. In any case, if there is going to be something scandalous or not, because the secrecy of diplomacy
but politics is always scandalous. And
that is true. That is true. So it is really hard to balance the situation out. The next and final question, let's sum it up a little bit. Actually, two questions. I would like to know your take on Zelensky's behavior in the situation, taking into account the telephone conversation. I remember a former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Klimkin, praised Zelensky because he said that Zelensky didn't promise anything personally to Trump. He was staying pretty general on the issues.
On the other hand,
yes,
saying that I'm going to have 100% my pocket prosecutor general, which is not a good thing.
Yes. So please continue. What is your take on this? And maybe you could sum this up and maybe do you have some forecast for this situation evolving?
Evolving maybe in the direction of Monica Zelensky. This is a very dirty joke towards Ukrainians, but an interesting one. Anyway, okay, the first answer of Zelensky, President of Ukraine Zelensky, during Zelensky-Trump briefing, when asked this question about interference in the United States election, elections. The answer was very good. I have to praise our current president for that, because he said Ukraine is by no means trying to interfere into the democratic process of United States presidential election. That was a very good answer, things that people would like to hear. Yes, and this is something I like. Then his excuse, he made very recently a statement that he was not under pressure, so it was not a direct order, there were no orders to directly investigate this case and things like that. If something is said, then it is a bad idea to make excuses afterwards. So we need to face the consequences of our actions and also of things that we say. So I hope that, and also his explanation that he didn't mean it that way, that the current prosecutor general is his person, things like that. But it is an indicator that our current Ukrainian president is learning how to become a decent politician, not a politician from a TV series, and not a comedian who made his career by mocking politicians and making fun of politics and politicians. So it is a good indicator that our current Ukrainian president is learning how to be a decent politician involved in different world politics and affairs.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said an interesting phrase that Ukraine needs to face repercussions, needs to be ready to face repercussions after this, and looks like Trump-Zelensky meeting didn't go that successful, and Trump...
We could read that by the faces. They're both stressed and a bit disappointed, but this is natural under such a pressure. So
yeah, but Trump, what do you think about Trump's comment? He said that basically he wants Ukraine to solve the situation with Russia, with Vladimir Putin, solve that thing out, yes. And looks like only then the next meeting between the Ukrainian president and the American president can happen. Looks like he took it really personally.
Well, I'm not 100% sure about that. It was a bad phrase, and this Trump's kind of love for Putin, or at least his weakness for Putin, his maybe to some extent even adoration of the Russian leader and the way Putin does things in Russia and solves problems in Russia. Maybe he just, maybe Trump is just envious of what Putin can do. It is a bad sign, of course, because it is very important for Ukraine to maintain this unity, or this, at least this thing that unites both Democrats and Republicans, the support of Ukraine against Russia. We need to maintain this, and we need Russian support in counteracting Russia, definitely. So I hope there will be next meeting between Zelensky and Putin more rich in content to discussion, and maybe not so much about all these Biden and all these impeachment affair. I do hope for that.
So all these situations can be at the same time benefiting or threatening for Ukraine. And my very last question, as I promised that would be a final one, but now is a final one.
Okay.
So how can Ukraine balance it out in a right way now?
By becoming a viable democracy, by proving that we have a working and functionable justice system and law enforcement agencies and structures, that if there is a crime, it is investigated properly with all the evidence and things like that. We also have to say that we appreciate the support of Germany, France, and our European countries, because it was something we didn't mention. Actually, saying that they did not help us as much as they could have helped us, and things like that, and actually paying attention and be more sensitive to international politics.
Okay, thank you very much. We run out of time. I thank you for your comments, and thank you for being a guest today in the studio. That was Dr. Maksym Yakovlyev, Director of the School for Policy Analysis at the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy National University. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.